right, what's going on, everybody? Christopher Riggs with TexasWest Capital. And I've got Andrew and Tillman from Arch Public, of course, my co-host here, sitting in the wings. Good to have you all here. Before we get going, as always, hit the thumbs up, hit the like, hit the subscribe, follow us. You can follow me on X at TXWest Capital. Andrew is AP_abacus. Yeah, if you don't know how to spell abacus, well, you know, you can look under the video. It's there. So, and Tillman is still reliving his glory days of college football. He is Texas OL 61. Seriously, guys, look up Tillman Holloway, University of Texas. You'll see his big brute self over there. And by the way, speaking of Tillman, I'm going to keep saying this because he can't say anything right now, but he's the reason why we're running a little late here. He came on and we couldn't see him, but we could hear him. And then he went off and he came back and we could see him, but then we couldn't hear him. And so now, y'all, I don't know, you know, for better or for worse, you can both see and hear Mr. Tillman Holloway here when we pull him up. So speaking of which, let's go and pull these guys up here. Had to do that, had to have a little fun there. But, you know, what wasn't true? It was all honest, right?
Chris sent me a bad link is what it was, because as soon as I went back to the original link, it worked perfectly.
Exact same link, guys. Don't listen to this guy. Exact same link. Anyway, good to see you guys here today. How y'all doing?
Doing fantastic, man. It's been a great week. Been a great week to get back, really get back at it. So
dropped to 95, and I've heard, you know, it's practically dead is what I've heard. So, you know, I don't know if the show's going to continue.
Yeah, there he goes. He's off. He's off.
Wait, here he comes. What the heck just happened?
Chris, you're kicking me off, man. That's what's
happening. This isn't the thing. It's not us, man. You know, it's you.
Somebody,
it's not me.
We need to get somebody else in control of the plane. The plane is not looking good right now.
Well, I was just about to ask you if you could hear Andrew, because he was talking to you just like.
Yeah, he just talked right over me.
I wasn't hooked up. I wasn't able to hear Andrew. Andrew, what were you saying? I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me hear.
I was just saying it's been a great start to the year. It's great to be in 2025. It's amazing that we're in 2025. It feels like 2015 was about 12 minutes ago, and 2005 was an hour ago. It's remarkable that we're here, but here we are, and you know, opportunities abound, and it's great to be on the show and great to be able to share with folks what we think the opportunities are.
Yeah, I was sitting in a hotel room in Dallas at Y2K 1999, waiting for the world to end the night before I played in the bowl game, the Cotton Bowl. And we had a team meeting, and the coach said, even if the world's on fire tomorrow, we're playing, so you better go get some rest. But that feels like yesterday to me, and we're closer to 2050 than we were to that night. So
I was waiting for you to say this at some point.
Yeah, if that's so maybe we should change the name of the show to Old Guys with Beards and Bitcoin.
Why we gotta say old? They can see we all got white in our beard, except it looks like Tillman colors his a little bit. But you know.
I do not color mine, and I do have some gray, so just give me a break. Do you see that gray right there?
Listen, a couple of your nose hairs are gray that we can now see based on that.
I will tell you, I do have quite the gray sideburns, so that's why I shaved that.
Yeah, see me, it's all the gray in the beard, not on the top of the head when it does come in. So you know. And we can't tell, you know, Andrew does such a great job of really getting that clean there.
Yeah, listen, I'll be honest, that I've got very few redeeming physical qualities, but I do have a very egg-like dome. Okay, it is
very symmetrical,
very well done. Yeah, nothing I can do about it. It just is what it is, right?
Yeah, I'm glad we can hear it twice, because you have still the same echo from not having a microphone.
Chris doesn't seem to be bothered by any of the echo. You seem to be bothered by it.
Well, you listen, I'm a perfectionist. I'm an OCD perfectionist.
Oh my gosh! So there's the show, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you had a great time. You know, nobody can ever accuse us of not trying to have a little fun here when we're sharing all the information that we can share with you guys. So speaking of information to be shared, price drop here. The sky is not falling. I will not be Chicken Little here. I would advise you not to be the same, the same thing, the Chicken Little thing. But price has pulled back, caught some people off guard. Shouldn't. I mean, at the end of the day, we're just sideways, guys. We've been sideways for weeks and weeks and weeks now. And really, that's all we are at this time.
It's less than an 8% drop, man.
Yeah.
We went from 101 and change to 94. I mean, it's give me a break.
It's more telling to me how it drops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's a single bar, basically. If you can't spot that as market manipulation, then we need to read some books together, because there was no meaningful news. Everything that's coming out is still positive, and you get this massive spike down. And if you start looking at, you need to do volume analysis against these spikes. The volume's nothing. It's like, so if you have big moves down on low volume, things are on sale, is the way I look at it. But
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, again, we've been going. I mean, price really has been just kind of oscillating over the same kind of, whatever that is, $15,000 range or so since back around mid-November. So here we are, getting on to 2 months into that. And I'll tell you what, this cycle, previous cycles you'd be like, oh my God, it's 2 months. But this time we've had 2 periods where we've had like 7 months of sideways. At this point, it's like, well, crap, here we go again sometimes, right?
Listen, they have to shake people out. And sometimes in the past cycles, people would get shaken out by these massive drawdowns, right? Where everybody's scared that it's going to zero. I don't think they can pull that off anymore. So how do you shake people out? There's multiple ways, and boredom is one of the best ways to shake people out. You just get people thinking, oh, it's this, I'm bored, and they start making dumb decisions, including myself. And so, I think these are a maturing of the markets always looks like this, right? You have these huge volatility swings in its newborn state, and as it matures, those swings tighten and tighten and tighten. But within that tight range, there still has to be massive volatility and or extreme boredom to drive people to sell their stack. This is just classic accumulation manipulation. Then move.
Well, and it's we the reply guys come out when we dip under 100 into the 90s. And it's like, oh yeah, we're going to 73, we're going to 78, and I'm like, even if that happens, who cares? We were at 35 12 months ago. So zoom out for just a 12-month period, and we are where we are. It's a again, I've said it many times. I mean, we got a quote unquote BART head and shoulders inside of 24 hours. Sitting on the chart right now. So if it pops from 97 to 102 for no reason inside of a 4-hour period, and then drops in the same way, I mean, what's the difference, right?
Well, I think like analogies speak sometimes more volume than even the reality. And the analogy I would give is like, if you're measuring someone's heart, right, through an EKG, and the doctor's like, hey, we need to monitor you. They don't listen to your heart for 2 seconds and make a diagnosis. They strap something to you for like a month or 2 weeks because they need a bigger sample size than 2 seconds. And I saw somebody post the other day online, like, Bitcoin's something crazy about Bitcoin being dead or something. And it was see, Bitcoin can't hold 100. It's going to 65. And that's just, in my mind, irrational to think like that, because the 100 is a moment in time. It's not at 100, but for a blip, it's 100, 101, 102. It's back down to 98. So think about price movement like a EKG on reading a heart. There's lots of ups and downs and swings, but that doesn't tell you much unless you take a large data set and then analyze those. And so, like Andrew said, zoom out, look at the larger data set.
But we're all crypto Twitter. We don't have time to zoom out, right? We live on the 5-second chart, right? I mean,
well, Fib posted a month chart, and literally I started dying laughing because no one looks at the month chart anymore. Like, especially in the crypto space, like you're expecting me to hold my position for 30 days? I mean,
yeah. But but that's the same thing though. You guys know, y'all been around the markets, long like I have, and that that's what people do though. And then what happens months later after they've tried to buy and sell all these different emotional ways all the way through it, the price goes flying up and they're up like 50%. And then they're like, well, damn, if I just held, but you couldn't convince them of that at the time. It was like, oh my God, no, this thing needs to go up 50% tomorrow. Otherwise it's broken. It doesn't work. I'm going to lose money, right?
Well, it will go up 50% tomorrow. You just don't know when tomorrow is. The spikes are crazy. Like, I don't know I can't remember the statistic, but I want to say something like 10 days of movement account for 90% of every year's move in Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think it was Fun Strat that said that.
Yeah, so if you miss those 10 days, it's bad for you, really, really bad for you. So what does that mean? Well, do the math. It means that you got to sit around for 355 days, and if you sit around for the 355 and you catch the 10, then you're really, really happy. And if you sit around for 355 and don't catch the 10, you're not in a good state of mind.
You're not so happy.
No, you're not so happy.
Well, so here's the thing. Price drop. Again, we're still range bound, been almost 2 months now. But institutional interest continues to increase, right? We continue to see more and more. I know Andrew's got his pulse on that with his connections that he's got in TradFi. I talk a lot with Gary, Gary Cardone. Of course, he's got all his group of people, his ultra high net worth group of people that he's in, and the bankers that he talks to and all that. And, so a lot of retail doesn't have access to this kind of information. So when you say something, or Andrew, God bless his heart, he posts about it on X, and then everybody and their grandmother comes out with the source, trust me, bro, and all this other, stuff without understanding, who exactly they're talking to and, what kind of background there is there. No. It's easy to see that retail is going to get into that and because price drops a little bit and they freak out, right?
Well, again, there are big, huge, cavernous, Grand Canyon-like differences between wealth management, high net worth, ultra high net worth clients, and the world that they live in, and crypto Twitter anon dudes, replying to tweets, right? So they're focused on, has Bitcoin dropped in price since you said that Bitcoin hit 100K? And 2 days later it's dropped, and so I want to dunk on you. Big difference there. And so when you talk to folks at Morgan Stanley that are in their PWM division, which is private wealth management, so private wealth management practices at Morgan Stanley, they only work with clients that have $10 million or more in their accounts, right? You can't work with a PWM financial advisor unless you have that, and it takes a long time to get that designation as an advisor and then to be in that particular basket of advisors. It's only about 10% of their entire sales force. And their commentary to me yesterday, I talked to two of them, and their points is that Bitcoin is part of the conversations now. And the reason why it's part of the conversation is that these folks are seeing the Larry Finks of the world talk about it for a year now. It's constant conversation. And then when they look at portfolio construction, then when they look at returns and what has been the best asset over a 1, 3, 5 year period, they're seeing in that 1 year period, BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF pop up as a significant performer. And then they see in the news that BlackRock, their IBIT is the biggest ETF that they've ever launched.
Yeah.
And then BlackRock themselves are touting that. So, it goes from not being a part of the conversation to, hey, I've got 1 to 3% of my, my portfolio in gold and gold stocks or gold ETFs or whatever it happens to be. In other words, exposure to gold. Should I replace that with this? Or should I replace a portion of it with this? And those are the conversations that are happening. And then, there was a portion of that conversation that said, and some of our clients that are in the 25 to $50 million space and are even a little more savvy, they're like, I don't know, ETFs are great, but at what point are there going to be products that are going to give me exposure that's a little different than just, allocating to a Bitcoin ETF? Are there going to be some derivatives? Are there going to be some yield products? Is there going to be something that gives me exposure but doesn't necessarily also give me exposure to potential downside that's 30 to 50%? So those conversations are being had. Those conversations did not exist 12 months ago at this time. Couldn't exist because the Bitcoin ETFs didn't exist until 4 days from now. So it's a really interesting time, and it's really interesting to see those conversations happening. By the way, Morgan Stanley, approved only 2 of the Bitcoin ETFs across the entirety of their platform, not just PWM, but the rest of their platform. So the rest of their platform only has access to BlackRock and Fidelity's Bitcoin ETFs. So you have to wonder, what was the decision making there, and what were those conversations like with BlackRock and Fidelity? Or was it just a choice that says, listen, we trust these organizations, so we're going to start here? I don't know. But having those conversations and it being, today, it's, should I replace my gold exposure with Bitcoin exposure? Where's it going to be a year from now? Where's it going to be a year from now? And I think that's the path that we're on, right? That's the path that we're on.
And that's, to me, the least aggressive path. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of corporations are being forced into this, and the numbers speak that. I think 3 months ago, there were 30 publicly traded companies with Bitcoin on their balance sheet. I think today it's over 75. That's not because there's a bunch of people in the boardroom going, man, we should buy Bitcoin because it's going to make us rich. No, it's because they have access to cheap debt. They have access to non-recourse debt. And there's no better delta from a risk-reward perspective over the last 15 years than putting that debt to work into Bitcoin. And they're following the example of guys like Michael Saylor, who have found that glitch in the matrix, essentially, where it's an infinite money printing machine. Saylor's even said this: if Bitcoin goes to $1, none of the debt that I've raised to buy Bitcoin is going to come back as they can't call the debt. It's just convertible to shares. So there is no price by which he goes bust or he has a default on that debt. That's incredible. That gives you incredible staying power, regardless of what the dips look like in Bitcoin. And when you have 2%, 3% allocation, those dips mean nothing to your top line and your bottom line. So it's something where I think we were talking about this yesterday on the show, the competitive delta that Bitcoin adds to the equation, there's nothing else like it. So Andrew's point about gold is spot on, because a lot of those entities own a portion of gold as an anti-inflationary hedge, right? And so when you're looking at that now, is gold better than Bitcoin? Well, you can argue it is, but the performance sure as heck hadn't been. So, when you're in a publicly traded company and you're trying to leverage profits into a multiplier represented in your share price, you want some exposure to, the micro caps of the world, the high potential and also in some cases high risk. But if you can structure the risk correctly within your overall strategy, it really isn't high risk anymore. And that's where the delta is being created, where it's like all upside, very, very little downside.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point you made there, because when people think about, okay, well, this company isn't going to do it because Bitcoin's so risky. Well, again, first of all, it is probably the best risk-adjusted return that it's ever had at this point now, just because of the adoption and, the ETFs and everything now. But beyond that, it's not simple. It's not a simple, oh, well, we're going to pull it in and all of a sudden it's just, high risk. It's like you said, how do you, because these companies aren't bringing it in as just itself, right? It's all part of their bigger portfolio. And so how do you adjust the overall risk in that portfolio, right? And this is big for me.
Here's, in my mind, sorry to interrupt, but it's very simply this. Every dollar you hold is losing about 10% a year in purchasing power, okay? That's a big number. That's bigger than we've ever seen in my lifetime, or in my adult lifetime, I should say. So let's just say I put 2% of my allocation of cash into Bitcoin. And let's say it fails. Let's say it goes to 0. Well, my inflation rate went from 10% to 12%. Let's say Bitcoin goes up exponentially. I could eat up the entire 10%. I could make up with 2% of my allocation the entire 10% loss that I'm guaranteed to have every year.
Yeah.
That's why they're doing it, because there's a lopsided, risk reward ratio. And for an individual, excuse me, for an individual, think about it like this. If you have that same 10% eating up your buying power every year, and you were able to put 10% into Bitcoin as a savings mechanism, you're literally removing yourself and then some from the inflationary environment that we're all stuck in. And that's what people are talking about, is like, how do you remove the risk of the inflating dollar? Trump said yesterday, I will not let the US government default. What does that mean? It means a few letters: BRRRRRRRRRRRRRRR. The money printing machines can't stop. They won't stop. We're a debt-driven society, which means inflation's a part of the gig. And what we're at right now is a precipice. And the precipice is this. We're at the place where computers were understood by everyone, but no one owned them in their home still. And there were people out there going, you know what? In 20 years, every human being in the United States is going to own a computer. We're going to be handing them out on the sidewalks. And they're right now. I mean, the vast majority of people have computers in their home. And what has that done to the GDP of the United States? Well, it's far eclipsed any inflation that we've put to the dollar. And so if you look at cryptocurrency and you look at AI and you look at the potential that they have to create top line revenue for the US, there's a lot of people out there, very smart people, that I think are saying there's no reason why we shouldn't print more dollars. We're in an industrial revolution 2.0 that we've never seen before. And the amount of money we can create off of these technologies will eclipse any inflation that we put into the economy. I think that's where we are. And I think that that's why a lot of old schoolers are freaking out about the inflation rate. But I don't think necessarily it's warranted if we take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of us.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, right? You can't be so stuck in what you think is going to happen, what you think should happen. You have to go with what's happening, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're in the markets, the goal is to make money, right? The goal is to, if you're Bitcoin, maybe additionally to protect yourself against that inflation, right? And so if you're going to do that and you're going to be honest with yourself about that, you got to give up on well, it should be this, or it's not fair. We hear a lot of that with people, not just with markets, but with everything else, in the life that people talk about in government and stuff. And you really just have to kind of let go of that. You're right. It sucks. It's not fair, whatever. It is what it is. The reality of it is what it is. So you have to understand it for what it is, and then you have to work within that.
Well, I would argue the quicker you
right?
understand what it is and the quicker you swallow the pill, the more money you make.
Yeah, exactly. The quicker, exactly. But see, that's the thing. A lot of retail, unfortunately, and then, we're trying to help out here with this, getting the thinking straight, is they never get to that point, right? They continue like with everything else in our lives. Normally we say, oh, well, it should be this way, and I'm not listening to anything else. And things don't stay that way, but you don't change, right? You don't get with it and go, okay, well, this is the way it is. How do I, make best of it? And that's unfortunate because, again, at least in the US, if you're 18 years or older, you can access the markets, right? Legally, you can access the markets. Markets can be life-changing, but they're only life-changing if you understand them for what they are. If you sit there and you fight them and you fight them and you fight them, it might be life-changing in the fact that it takes all your money. It makes you poorer than when you went in. But it won't be life-changing to the other side, which is what we should all be looking for. Because, again, I've said this so many times before, at the end of the day, there's nobody that cares more about you, cares more about your family than you. Not government, not anybody else.
So, when you take a look at where Bitcoin is right now, 93, right? And so let's bring some context as to where we're headed. We were on a show yesterday with the chief investment officer at Bitwise, Matt Hogan. And Scott made he brought up Bernstein. Bernstein had another note out where they believe, Bitcoin is going to go to 200K. This was a note that followed a note that previously said, hey, whatever you heard about crypto, forget it, just buy everything, right? And so the follow-up to that was in 2025, they think it's going to 200K. And the money quote from Matt, who is as sharp as it gets, when Scott talked about Bernstein and 200K, it's like, is that possible? Is 200K possible? And Matt immediately says, it's not just possible, it's super possible, right? Well, why?
It's seriously under. It's the most safe bet based upon the parameters that they're using to make that calculation. Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but that bet is based upon us doing the same volume we did this year.
Yeah, just doing the same thing that we've done this year. And his point is we've gone from, as Tillman said earlier, 30 plus to now 70 plus corporations in the S&P 500 that have Bitcoin on their balance sheet in some way, shape, or form. That's probably going to go to 200 instead of 70 in 2025. There's going to be additional nation states, no matter how big or how small, that are going to add Bitcoin to their balance sheets. So those are massive macro developments that put a significant floor on the price of Bitcoin, but there is no ceiling, right, to that. It's just a question of how much and for how long. And so you add that to then my micro, portion of the conversation with Morgan Stanley advisors who say that, clients are now asking about, should I transition from having gold exposure to Bitcoin exposure? So you've got bottom line and top line pressure that's to the upside. So where do you go to find any potential net negativity? Well, there's a little bit of a conversation about out there that says, are we actually going to get a Bitcoin strategic reserve? Is it possible that we don't get one? Well, I don't know. Maybe there is a version where we don't get a standing on the rose garden lawn talking about legislation that is a Bitcoin strategic reserve. My guess is that kind of announcement doesn't happen, but a Bitcoin strategic reserve light probably does happen.
Well, but let's talk about the delta from the last 4 years to the next 4 years. There was a lot of selling in the last 4 years from the government. I don't think there's going to be any selling.
There's not going to be. Yeah,
even that's a net positive, right?
That's Bitcoin strategic reserve light, right? And then a notch above Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Lite is there's an executive order that talks about holding Bitcoin, maybe not even talk about the purchase of Bitcoin, but holding Bitcoin in some way, shape, or form. My guess is that will happen because of the push that Bitcoin and crypto brought to Trump's reelection. That there's
You want to know what
be...
I would do if I was Trump?
Hmm.
I'd issue every tax return in Bitcoin.
Huh.
Because then it gets the Bitcoin to the least of these, and it gets it to them. Like, who gets the biggest tax returns? W-2 employees. Who needs the hedge the most? W-2 employees. And you do that, and you make our nation rich, in my opinion, 10 years from now, in a way that you couldn't otherwise. You give tax returns now in cash. Granted, most people will sell, but the 20% that don't, or the 50% that sell 50 or more percent but still have some, that right now, measured a decade from now, will be meaningful wealth. And I think there's some plays here. He says he's going to take over the Panama Canal and all sorts of other stuff.
Greenland, bringing Canada as the 51st state. He's pissing everybody off.
but the point is who knows what the Strategic National Reserve Fund looks like. There's a million good ideas of how to incorporate Bitcoin into the U.S., right?
It's there's some people that like to be smarter than smart, or like, the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve isn't going to happen. But again, it's just a question of what does that mean? What does their version of a Bitcoin Strategic Reserve actually look like? And then what does it mean that version of that they're thinking of, it doesn't look like? And so my base case is we move from the government selling as much Bitcoin as they possibly can because they consider it ill-gotten gains, to a government that doesn't sell any of what's left over anymore, and finds a way again through executive decision to put it on some balance sheet somewhere. I think it's going to land there, simply because there was it's very difficult to go from a Bitcoin conference that has Donald freaking Trump at it. I still can't believe that happened. And for him to disappoint that sizable grouping of people with incredible capital behind them to wield if some of these things don't happen in a relatively meaningful way. So I think we get some sort of a nod and a wink, and a nod and a wink I think is going to be enough to feel good about.
Especially when the nod and the wink comes with a whole army of politicians that are much more vested in Bitcoin becoming something. I mean, you talk about Congress and the House, there's a lot of people in there that are betting their whole career on Bitcoin being a thing. And they're willing to be a lot more vocal than, the president of the United States probably can be. And so if you just look at the power that's pushing Bitcoin into the narrative every month, it's not one person, it's not 10 people. It's a very large army of very convinced people that
if you've got Brad Garlinghouse of XRP having dinner with Donald Trump down at Mar-a-Lago, I have a hard time believing that there's not going to be some sort of Bitcoin Strategic Reserve commentary / movement. I just have a really hard time believing that, because if you've gotten all the way down to the XRP spot, now to be fair, XRP put up a huge dollar number towards his inaugural fund, so you get a seat at the table. It is what it is, politics 101. But if you're there, and then at the same time you've got really huge Bitcoiners, Bitcoin Magazine and that group and the like, putting up similar numbers, you're going to be somewhat beholden to that group. That group is a very meaningful group. And so,
well, but beyond that group, you know how dirty politics are. My grandfather used to say, back when the left and the right were more close to the center, he'd say, I give money to both of them because one of them's going to win. He didn't care. He wasn't a Republican or a Democrat. And my point is like, yes, Andrew, I agree with you that there is a huge army of donors, but Donald Trump has appointed people.
Yeah.
They're his guys. They're his girl. They're and he's appointed people that are rabid nuts for crypto. That's different to me than getting a meeting because you gave a bunch of money. That's like him going, let me set the chessboard up to where we're gonna make a move on this. We're gonna make it something, right?
Yeah, it would be a surprise. It would be a surprise if something like that didn't happen. If a Bitcoin strategic reserve of some meaningful amount, doesn't happen. Now, here's what if I were to guess, there will be an announcement. There will be an executive order, and let's say that we're going to buy $1 million a year, $1 million Bitcoin a year to add to what we already have. We're not going to sell. That's not a ton. That doesn't even rise to the MicroStrategy type level. But
wait, $1 million would put a million a year would $1 million Satoshi right now.
Okay, well,
yeah. So I think the $1 million would be over the 4-year period, is what I've heard. Yeah.
So if they do that, but then somehow over a period of the first 18 months or the first 2 years, they don't actually buy that much, right? They only buy half of that or whatever the number. It's possible that something like that occurs. But I do think that Donald Trump likes to grab headlines, right? I mean, he enjoys doing that. So I think if you're willing to say we're going to purchase Greenland and I'm going to send my son over there to do a mission and do an evaluation and come back with.
Wait, was that picture green screened in y'all's opinion? Because it did not. I mean, they weren't even dressed appropriately for the weather they were standing in.
Hey, all I have to say is Gulf of America. All right.
Gulf of America.
That's right. So yeah, it's a there'll be some sort of announcement. Whatever the details are, we'll find out. My guess is that we're in the throes of buy the rumor, sell the news. So there'll be hey, we're about to get a Bitcoin strategic reserve announcement. There'll be a push higher on price for that, and then when it happens, it'll be we'll go back to flat to down a little bit, and then we'll get back to the fundamentals of why Bitcoin should and continues to go up, because there'll be other announcements and other nation states and yada yada yada.
Let me just interrupt y'all here for 1 minute. We had a couple of questions a little bit ago, and I want to make sure they're answered because I know you guys got to leave just a tad bit early today. Black Millennial was wanting to know, are you guys going to have another 10-slot Black Friday sale for the concierge program next year?
Yeah, we will. And generally speaking, at least once a month, we do something. You just gotta stay kind of tightened to our our Arch Public X account. It's at Try Arch Public. If you follow that fairly closely, we'll do announcements, near the end of each month that'll open up a couple of spots that are somewhat discounted. So yeah, we give people opportunities to get into our community at a discounted rate.
Okay. And then the other question was from Mark. He said, was the announcement made for the January 1st Beards and Bitcoin contest?
I've DM'd everybody that was chosen as a winner. There were about 17 of you that reposted. I tried to reach out to 5 of you, but you don't allow DMs. The rest of you I was able to get in contact with, and yes, we have made good on our word. So
so it ended up not being just one person. Tillman went out of his way here, and all whatever it was 17 or 18 or whatever y'all that had reposted it
are eligible. And to be honest with you, I can read some of the names that I wasn't able to get in contact with, and if you guys want to figure out how to turn on your DMs, then we can get you guys something too. Let me pull this up real quick.
Anybody got the Jeopardy theme here? We can kind of play that. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, so I wasn't able to get in contact with first time twit. I wasn't able to get in contact with Crypto Chewy, CHOUI. I wasn't able to get in contact with John W9240. Also, Margin Tio. Wasn't able to get in contact with Shamanah, SHAMANAH. And I also was not able to get in contact with Corn Tejas. And that was a great name, right? CORNTEJAS. So reach out to me via DM if you're one of those guys, and we'll get you taken care of.
Margin Teo, TEO, not Margin.
Oh, sorry, Margin Teo.
No, not you. Somebody was asking in the comments there. So guys, if you heard your app there, get your DMs working right so he can get a hold of y'all. Again, we thought it was just going to be one thing, and he said, you know what? Let me know how many people are there. Reposted it there, and look what happened. So if you thought, man, I ain't going to win anyway, so I ain't going to repost it, you lost, man. You should have reposted it. You would have gotten into it.
Next time, we'll do some more.
So anyway, so that was a lot of fun. Thank you, Mr. Tillman, for that. We appreciate that. I'll continue to push people toward, Googling you. We'll get your name up in the Google ranks. Looking for Tillman at the University of Texas, and y'all can tag him with pictures of him online there. Andrew, I'm sure, has some really good pictures that we can't see.
Chris,
yeah, I do have really great. I've got some great stuff. I've got some really great stuff. One of these times we'll have to do like maybe a private StreamYard with your best customers, and we'll share some really great stuff about Tillman. We'll just lay it all out.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it does. It'd be a good time.
Tillman has no say in this. We'll just figure it out here.
I will say this. Tillman is a good sport, okay? Tillman is a good sport.
He is really great sport, yeah.
We make a bit of sport of him on this show, and he takes it well, so we appreciate it.
He takes it in stride.
Listen, I have a very thick hide. I've been in the African safari for a while, and I've tried to be taken down by many lions. And I will tell you what my granddad used to say to people when he was about to get in a fight. There's a guy out there that can whip me, but you sure as hell ain't him.
Well, Stats McGee said to tell you, hook him. Stats is over there.
That's what I'm saying. I'll be at the game. If anybody's going to be there, DM me. We'll meet up.
By the way, guys, if you see people come on here that start talking about other tokens and, I buy the pre-sale stuff like that, understand, most likely a scammer, spammer. Don't jump out of your way to go buying it. Because man, oh man, that is not the way to trade, guys. That's not the way to make money in the markets. So I just want to say, be careful with that. We've got almost 1,500 people watching right now. I don't want anybody falling into that nonsense.
It's a, the reality is there are limited projects in the space overall that have meaningful utility. And under that guise, for example, our firm is going to release a couple new algorithms on the crypto side of things, Ethereum and Solana, in the middle of this month, and put together a crypto concierge package that I think people are going to be really impressed with. People have the opportunity to not only accumulate in an intelligent way those assets, but also arbitrage those assets in ways that we're going to show them how to do. So the ability to change.
You're going to get the same access to tools that literally the biggest firms in the world have or have site varieties of. This is something that you can just layer on layer on layer. You can create instances for monthly savings. You can create instances to take advantage of massive drops in price, regardless of what you're doing. If you're asleep or at work or whatever, you've got that instant set, and it's going to automatically take advantage.
Yeah. For example, we'll ship these with a couple of stock settings, and one of those stock settings is an arbitrage play where it's going to trigger a purchase for you anytime, for example, Bitcoin drops by 5%. Well, that would have happened yesterday. Without you having to think about it, Bitcoin was down between 5.1 and 5.6% throughout the day. So you would have purchased Bitcoin even if you were on a boat somewhere and had no access to your phone or anything. It would have done it on your behalf.
And you tell it, look, I want to spend this much money when that happens. And so you can dial it in to meet your specific needs. But then you have something that's buying the dips for you, right? Think about that. You know, buying the dips is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So since when? I thought we were supposed to freak out and you yell the sky is falling and it's all going to zero when it dips. That's what I thought it was. You know, at least if we listen to crypto Twitter.
I've
right?
said this on the show before, but listen, I don't know what your favorite clothing branding is. Mine's probably Filson. I love Filson. And Filson's expensive. It's all wool, you know, Merino wool or however you pronounce it. And if they came out every Christmas, they'll come out and say 15% off. I don't get mad about that. I'm happy that I'm getting 15% off of something that I want to own.
Yeah.
You know, if Bitcoin is something you want to own, you shouldn't be mad about the dips. You should be buying the dips. Like that's.
And we've talked about that numerous times throughout. You know, we've been doing the show now for this is, I guess, the 7th month here, and you know we do this weekly, and you know I've talked about that a few times. You know, this idea that retail generally gets freaked out when price drops, and yet they should be much more excited about it. Kind of changing that, like the big players do, right?
But you should evaluate if you are getting freaked out that you may have lumped into few chunks. You're not keeping enough cash on the side for the dips, because everyone, let's just say I only have $1,000 to spend on Bitcoin. If I only have $1,000 to spend on Bitcoin, the mentality is let's just buy the $1,000.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter whether it's $1,000 or $10 million. You should break it up in chunks. Mm-hmm. You should buy little amounts, because when the opportunity presents itself, you want to have cash available, right? That's where you make. And it's all about sending those soldiers out and expecting them to bring more back with them. You know, prisoners of war. Every dollar you put into Bitcoin, there's a price associated with it. And if you're ever going to sell it, when you sell it at a higher price, you're bringing more soldiers back to put to work. That doesn't mean you put all the soldiers on the front line every single battle. That's not wise. Put enough on the front line to fight the fight. Keep a lot in the barracks so that if another battle breaks out, you can win that one too.
Yeah.
Tillman, king of the analogies.
Born and raised in Texas.
But yeah, I know you guys got to jump out of here. I know you've got a meeting to show to get to. So I guess we'll go ahead and end it there. As always, remember, the only thing you control is how much you lose, guys. So risk management, proper risk management is the end all be all to proper investing, proper trading, proper life. You know, you can't just go balls out, not worry about the risk associated with whatever you're doing. Doesn't mean don't take risk, but it means understand the risk you're taking and how to appropriately control for it, okay? So definitely love having you guys here. Hopefully you guys continue to enjoy the show. We're going to continue to put it out there. That said, if Tillman mentioned your name earlier, you're there on Twitter. Make sure that you're making your DMs accessible so he can slide into your DMs.
That's
you gotta have fun. Look, Andrew's tried so hard not to die laughing, but you know he wants to. And other than that, listen, guys, keep coming back. All right, I'll be live on Friday with a market analysis, market breakdown show there. Same time, same channels, all that. But then we'll be back again next Wednesday. And I'll tell you what, guys, we are going to blow this show up this year. So be sure you're in now, and you could say, "Man, I remember them fools when they were still fools." And we'll gladly say hi. All right. That's
Thanks,
it.
Chris. Have a great day.
You guys as always. Have fun. Do your thing. Get your stuff done. I'll see you guys next week. All right.
See you next week.
All right. Take care, everybody.